Welcome to How to Launch an Educational Consulting Business like me with the amazing Tinashe Blanchet. But let's go ahead and go through some announcements first. Who am I, you might say? I am Dr. Desiree Alexander, founder and CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting. So these are all of the different ways that you can contact me. Yay! If you're watching this on the YouTube videos, no, you do not get a certificate, but you do get the knowledge. And the link for resources are right under the video in the description. So what do we have coming up? The Leadership Academy is virtual, it's free, and it's 1 day of learning from educators of color. So everyone is welcome. Make sure that you register for that. It's a really good event. Then we have Leveraging YouTube for Learning coming up in June. So that's our first webinar in June. Come check this out. We use YouTube like every day, right? But do we leverage it for learning? Then we have the Google Admin Console. I'm not teaching this one. I'm just sponsoring it and hosting it. So if you are the Google admin at your school or in your district, or if you're like, oh my goodness, I know my Google admin, they need this, share it with them. Then we have, do you want to pass the SLLA test? This is your educational leadership test. So if you're interested in that, we have a live webinar coming up. Then designing your digital classroom with Schoology. So if you use Schoology, you definitely don't want to miss Dr. Will. Then we have ISTE. It's in NOLA, y'all. So come check out ISTE. And I'm presenting at different times. And this actually needs to be updated because I'm presenting at other times. But come check out ISTE. Then we do have Cognity is giving out 2 free ISTE tickets. So definitely register. Who knows? You may win. And if you're like, Desiree, I already have my ticket, you can get refunded. I mean, come on now. Come on. So definitely enter that. It's completely free. You're just entering to win. Then we have Fridays in July, the Summer Learning Series with Spaces, Melody and Ding. So definitely sign up for that. All of the sessions are at that website. Then we have Ed Change Global. It is back, but it is different and refreshed. So we have Ed Change Global After Dark, where we do all the contests and games and collaborations. And then we have ECG PD Day, where we do the actual trainings. But of course, there's always still contests and wingers, right? So there you go. It's no longer 24 hours. So check it out. Then we have the virtual DLC. And you may think, oh, well, that's just for Sci-Fair District in Texas. No, it's for everybody. So check it out. Then we have Immerse Students in Learning, exploring AR, VR, XR. And I know I keep saying this. I probably need to look it up. I don't know what XR is, but I'm gonna learn it because Rochelle is coming back and teaching it to us. Then we have, this is one we just added. So this is new, y'all. Creating follow-ups with Formule. So I use Autocrat all the time, but you know, Autocrat, you have to like connect it to like something else, where Formule, you can just send out those automatic emails without connecting it to anything. So I'm so excited that Catherine's going to come teach this to us. And then we have Start the Year Off Right with Parents. Of course, we need to connect with our parents early using Spaces. So Melody's going to come and let us know about that. Then we have Rochelle coming back with AI in education. Are they going to take us over? Should we be afraid? I'm not sure, but Rochelle will come and let us know about that. Then I'm doing an increase your ed tech footprint. So you're like, how do I become influential? Not in the way of like, yeah, I'm influential, but in the way of like, hey, people are listening to me. I want to help them. You can come to this. This is actually sponsored by Everyone Academy in Morocco, but I went ahead and put September 17th, 3 p.m. Central. That's our US time, if you're in US, but there you go. And then we have TCCA. I know it's so much stuff. Again, completely free in Houston, Texas. So come and join us there. And then 3 tools with endless possibilities. I'm so intrigued. Rochelle is coming back to teach us about that. And then we have all of the wonderful online self-paced courses that you can enroll in for like Google level 1, level 2, and all that good stuff. Ooh. And if you're like, Desiree, it was just too fast. Remember, It's all on the same website. You see, the link at the bottom doesn't change. So it's all at the same website. You go there, you can see everything. So, dun, 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 dun. Yes, that time, y'all. Okay, we are about to go ahead and get started with Tinashe talking about starting your educational consulting business.
Well, thank you so much, Desiree. That was so high energy. I'm hoping that I can match that energy. The first thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you to you, Dr. Desiree Alexander, for having me on this Saturday morning. I really appreciate you as a colleague and as a friend. And this is such a great opportunity for me to share this information with folks who are interested in learning more. I also want to direct everyone's attention to the link that's at the top of the screen. And I believe that Desiree has probably just dropped it in the chat. So I'm checking. Let's see. So yes, so Desiree just dropped that link in the chat for you. So I do want to give you a heads up about this link. So keep in mind that, you know, I have about 50 minutes. So I'm going to do my best to answer as many questions here as possible. But remember the title of this session, How to Launch an Educational Consulting Business Like Me being Desiree, because Desiree is also an educational consultant. And so a lot of those questions, if you just drop them in the chat, she'll probably be able to answer them. But if you have a question that you really want me to answer, one that I can share on screen, then feel free to go ahead and use that link. But just know I may not have time to answer all of those questions today. But another great reason to put it into that link is that I can access it after today's session and perhaps get back to you. I'm asking Desiree if there are any really great questions that you think should be highlighted, then you can use that link as well. So today's session is how to launch an educational consulting business. And my name is Tinashe Blanchet. I can be reached at missblanchett.net. So I want to start today's session with a quick question. Why are you here? What did you come for? So you can go ahead and drop your answer to that question. You can go ahead and use the link or use the chat. I'm looking at both right now. Why are you here? What are you here to learn? What piqued your interest about today's session? I just want to find out so that I can customize this session to your needs. So I'm watching the chat, looking for those responses to come in. You can use the chat or you can use the link, which either one will work for me. Why are you here? All right. I see someone saying retiring soon, want to do this as a post-retirement gig, best ways to match out talents to fill needs of other educators. Okay, another person looks like they're getting closer to retirement. I'm looking for systems and resources to set up and manage my business. Okay, so I have one person who looks like you're already doing this work, so that's good to know. So I'm still looking, help with a plan to be effective and focused. All right, I have someone who says they're retiring on May. Ooh, that's coming up soon, right? So retiring on May 31st, and I want to supplement my income. So this is right on time for you. Okay, got it. So I got some folks who are retiring. Okay, got some folks. Okay, someone said I'm a teacher right now, but I'm beginning to tutor more and may want to transition out of public school. I get that a lot. So there are a lot of people who are probably interested because you're looking for alternatives to being a classroom teacher, which this can totally be. But I also want to say that you don't have to quit teaching. So I don't want this book to be perceived as like, if you want to get out of the classroom, here's how. It's definitely a path out of the classroom. It took me out of the classroom. It took Desiree out of the classroom. But if you're, wanting to stay in the classroom a little bit longer, right? Or maybe you're not near retirement and you're just thinking maybe this is something that you can do to supplement your income, then that's totally an option as well, okay? So now that I know a little bit about you, let me tell you a little bit about me. So again, my name is Tinashe Blanchet, and I am a former high school math teacher. I taught high school mathematics for about 10 years before I became a full-time trainer and consultant. Now, the reason why I wrote this book is because when I first got started as a consultant, if I'm being honest with you, I had no idea where to start. I know I have at least a couple of Louisiana folks here, and I know a lot of you are probably probably familiar with the name Vicki Davis, i.e. the cool cat teacher. And so Vicki Davis came to our state technology conference, and she was the keynote speaker. And I can remember seeing her up there on that stage and watching her present. And at the time, she was so passionate about technology. And for me, I felt the same way. And so when I looked at her, I saw a lot of, my future there. I saw that, wow, I could do this as well. But again, I had no idea where to get started. And so I found myself asking her. I remember after she did her keynote, I was one of those people who was just kind of hanging around, went to her, she did a session after the keynote. So I was in that session and I was kind of hanging around and trying to see if I could ask her, how did you get started? But of course, in that environment, there were so many people who were trying to get her attention that it just really, I didn't feel like I got a great answer. And then years later, when I did kind of break into consulting and I started traveling and training teachers, so often I would get teachers who would come up to me after my session and say, hey, how did you get started doing this? I'm about to retire, or I'm looking for other options. I think I can do this. And what I realized is that this is a question that so many people have, and there are very little places to get answers. And so when I had the opportunity to, connect with a publisher, and I was asked, what do you want to write a book about? And I think I have a lot of books in me, but I was trying to figure out what was the first book I was going to write. And I just thought about all of those years of, either being in, confusion about what to do next with my consulting business, or all those years of teachers coming to me and saying, what should I do? How do I get started? And I thought this was the book that I needed to write. I needed to create a guide, if you will, so that if you do want to start an educational consulting business, you'll know what steps you need to take. Now, of course, my experience is limited. And so I actually interviewed over 40 educational consultants. So writing this book was not, a one-person job. I had the privilege of being able to reach out to my network and to my network's network, because they recommended more people to me. And I was able to interview a lot of people and ask them questions about, what does it look like to start an educational consulting business? What do you need to know? One question that I asked every interviewee is, what do you wish someone had told you when you first got started? And so I want to share with you what John Sowash had to say about that question.
I'm very fortunate because I actually did have someone in my life, kind of a business mentor at the time, and they did give me advice. And it's very simple. It's stop talking about it, stop thinking about it, do it. If people went and did the thing that they're thinking, planning, hoping, wishing they could do, they would be much further down the road. And this applies to pretty much any area of life, whether it's exercising or investing or healthy habits or stopping smoking or whatever. If you stop thinking about it and just do it, it is better, in my opinion, to figure it out along the way than to pretend that you can actually get it all figured out before you start. It's not even worth trying. You'll never do it.
So I really love what John had to say because, a lot of times when you have conversations with folks and you're looking to learn information and what do I need to do next? And the truth is that you just got to start. That was actually the advice that Vicki Davis gave me all those years ago. She actually recommended a book to me called Start. And it was just all about recognizing that you're not going to have all the answers. Even if you read this book from cover to cover, which I hope you do, but even if you don't, even if you do, it doesn't matter. You're still not going to know everything before you start. There's a lot that you're going to learn as you go. And you already know this because you're an educator, right? Think about what it's like to be a first-year educator versus, year 2, year 5, year 10, year 20, 30, right? So I have folks here who have been teaching for 30 years plus, right? So if you go all the way back to those first years in the classroom, you didn't know a lot. Right? There were a lot of things that you had to figure out while you were doing the work. And so that's also going to be true about being an educational consultant. And I know that it can be daunting, especially for those of you who are, towards the end of your teaching career, it can be really scary to basically start a whole new career. But I just want to encourage you that the easiest thing to do is to start, and you will start to learn as you go what are the things that you need to work on. So I really love this. If I can leave you with anything after today's session, is that you need to start, okay? I see the question, the author of Start is... Okay, I'm like in mid-sentence, so I can't remember it right now, but I will totally remember. Oh, thank you, Desiree. See, that's why I'm closing the chat. I don't want to interrupt. Let Desiree handle the chat. All right, so of course, you're here because you want to learn how you can get started. I can't say to you start and not tell you how to start. So we're going to go into 4 ways that you can start consulting right now. Now, I realize that everybody here is in a different stage of their journey. So you may be already doing some of these things, but I'm sharing this with you because these are the things that I did in order to start my consulting career. So the first thing you can do is start as an intern or an apprentice. So what does that mean? Well, if you know someone who's already doing the work, right, then it's very possible that they could use your help. Okay, so if you know an educational consultant, you know someone who's training teachers, even if it's not someone who's an independent educational consultant, maybe they're just training teachers within the district. Ask them if you can shadow them, if you can attend, a session with them. Once I had one of my former students, so someone who I taught high school math is now a high school math teacher. And she expressed to me that she was interested in, learning from me and learning more about my consulting. And so she's worked for me. She worked for me as a volunteer at my nonprofit, working with the kids. But she also went on one of my gigs with me. I had a training in New Jersey, and she went to New Jersey with me, and she helped me, and she kind of shadowed me. And then after that, we just kind of hung out in New York City. But for her, it was a great experience because she could actually see what it looked like. And so if you know someone who's doing this work, and you do, me and Desiree, then figure out if there's a way that you can connect with them, maybe go on a few gigs with them to just kind of see what it's like. Number 2, work as a subcontractor. So this is very similar to number 1, but the difference is that you're getting paid, okay? So being a subcontractor means that either an individual like myself or Desiree or a company, right? There are lots of companies out there. One that I've worked for is the Bureau of Education and Research. That's BER, and you can reach out to them at BER.org. Some of you may remember EdTech Team. Now, EdTech Team is no longer a thing, but for years, both me and Desiree were presenters for EdTech Team. And so basically, when you work for one of these companies as a subcontractor, you're not engaging directly with the client. So what that means is that typically the person who is engaging directly with the client, that's the person who's getting the full pay. Right? So for example, you may have a company that charges a client $5,000 for a day of professional development. They may pay you $1,000, right? So that's not your end game. That's not how you're going to build a business, right? You're going to need to have that direct relationship with the client eventually. But being a subcontractor gets your foot in the door. It gets you some experience. It gets you getting paid, right? This is also a really great option if you want to keep your full-time job. If you're teaching full-time, if you're doing something else, then being a subcontractor means that you're not having to do the work of going out and finding clients, right? And that $1,000 will still be substantial if you're using it to augment your full-time income. So definitely consider this option, working as a subcontractor. Number 3, present at a conference, okay? Now this is really important for beginners, right? If you're just getting started. So if you're one of my folks who's about to retire, you really, haven't done a lot, this is a good place to start. Presenting at a conference means that you are going into, your state conferences, your national conferences, like, Desiree just mentioned. She gave you like 4 different conferences that she's presenting at, right? So If you're just getting started, you may want to start with some state conferences. And when I say conferences, I basically mean whatever is the gathering for your professional organization, right? So I know a lot of us have an ed tech focus. So ISTE is our big national conference, right? But then you also have ISTE affiliates in each state. So in Louisiana, it would be LAQ, right? I believe it would be TCA in Texas. So whatever state you're living in, that would be the place to start if you're just getting started. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times your state conferences have a really low bar for presenters. And so you don't have to worry about like the stress of, am I going to get accepted? Your proposal or proposals, right, will get accepted, and it will put you in front of an audience of your peers from around your state, right? So it gets you exposure, it gets you experience. It also puts you in a space where you're going to see other people, like I did with Vicki Davis, who are, at the top of their game, and you can really see what that looks like. So it's also a great learning experience for you as well, great networking opportunity. Now, something else I want to say about presenting at conferences, we have a unique opportunity. This has been the case for a while, just with, technology, but also post-COVID, we are seeing so many online conferences. And I can say that when I first started out, that was not the case. So every time I wanted to present at a conference, I had to figure out, okay, like when I was teaching, is my school going to pay for this? Am I going to have to pay a registration fee? All of those kinds of things, right? But when you're talking about an online conference, travel expenses are not a factor, right? So you can do a bunch of different online conferences and get that experience under your belt. And you may or may not have to pay a registration fee. A lot of online conferences are free of charge. So I really want you to consider, again, for my beginners especially, presenting at conferences, presenting at state conferences if you're just getting started, presenting at online conferences if cost is a factor. But I do also want to say to you, you need to be willing to invest in yourself. So yes, presenting at free conferences is a great way to get started, but don't be afraid to pay to attend a conference. Don't be afraid to pay to a registration fee, okay? So I just really want you to consider this as an option. So I see that question coming in. So I'm going to do number 4, and then I'm going to answer that question. Number 4, offer your services to your current employer. Okay. So for those of you who are still working in schools, and even for my person who's retiring on May 31st, right? You still have an opportunity. You are connected to a school district. And when you work as an educational consultant, most of the work that you do will be in schools and for school districts. So take advantage of the connection that you already have. When I first got started, most of the presenting I did was in my school. I was a professional development resource teacher for several years, where I provided job-embedded professional development to the teachers in my school. So basically, I went from classroom to classroom and helped teachers. So that's something that you can do. You can talk to your principal. You can talk to folks in your district office and say, hey, I'm really good at, in my case, Google, right? I'm a Google girl. I'm Google certified. I know that we're using Google tools in this district. I would love to offer some Google training. This summer, I would love to do like a Google Classroom training. And again, the reason why you're doing this is because it gets you exposure, right? Let's say that your long-term game is that you want to leave the classroom because you're either retiring or you just want to transition to being a full-time educational consultant. Well, now they know you in your district and they know what you're capable of. So you can then approach them with a proposal later and say, I would love to offer these services to the district. Again, it also gets you experience and it gets you exposure. So don't discount the fact that you're already connected to a school in a district, and leverage that relationship as well. Okay. So I'm going to pause for questions, and I can see I already have a question. If you have a question, feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat, or you can use that slides link at the top of the screen. So here is my first question. How do you promote yourself at conferences when you're retired and no longer in the schools? Well, that is the beauty of a conference. Typically, conferences are not affiliated with schools, okay? Schools attend them, but you don't have to be working at a school in order to participate in a conference. conference. I haven't worked in a school since 2013, and I've attended lots of conferences since then, okay? So this is a very similar question to the one I had when I first started, which was, if I leave the classroom, how am I gonna stay connected, right? And those conferences are a really great way to do it. So I would submit to you that this is really more important for you if you're retired, because it's a way for you not only to get exposure, but also attend those sessions, right? Attend those sessions so that you can stay up to date with what's happening in schools. And, you know, if you're a technology person, what's the new technology that everyone's using? What do you need to know about? So if, I don't know, RKE Rich, if you want to put in the chat what particular subject, like what's your subject focus? What's your grade level focus? Because the conferences you attend are going to be, you know, based on what your subject expertise is. Whatever your professional organization is, that's the conference that you need to attend. So I'm a math teacher, so that means that I would go to the NCTM conference. Now, the thing about NCTM is that they have a national conference, but then they have state affiliates, right? So that means I could go to LATM, the Louisiana Association of Teachers of Mathematics. I could go to the NCTM regional conferences. So again, if you're just getting started, your proposal may not be accepted at the national conference, but you can always step down to your state conferences and regional conferences, and that'll be a great way for you to get your feet wet and get the opportunity to get connected with other educators. Let's see.
Tinashe, can I add on to that?
Please.
So Tinashe did give me permission to add on to certain things. So I am really big into promoting. So, you know, you're always promoting yourself. So I'm going to put a Google Classroom link out there, and I'll put it for the YouTube video as well. That kind of gets you started with promoting yourself and branding yourself, which is a whole different animal and a whole different area. But when you're talking about promoting yourself, some of the things that I learned was make sure that you have something that they can take away with them. I know it's old fashioned, like a business card is really old fashioned. Nobody wants to use them anymore, but it's something that they can take away with them, whether it's a business card or just a card or a one pager. Tinashe taught me about one pagers, but something that they can walk away with that's physically in their hand. And then another thing that I really, really learned kind of the hard way is have some way for you to get their information. So if they walk up to you and go, that was wonderful, I would love to have you come to our district, I usually would give them a card, and then I would never hear from them again because they're busy or they lose it. So have a way for you to get their information to kind of keep that connection going.
Thank you so much, Desiree. Look, to me, that sounds like we got to do another session because we can definitely do a session on branding yourself. That sounds like the next step. I want to go ahead and go to the next question. Is it okay to take what I already do at work and integrate that into what I want to do as an educational consultant? And this is from Ashley. And Ashley, your little profile picture is so cute. So I just want to tell you that. Let me tell you something. Yes. Not only is it okay, but it's going to put you at an advantage, Ashley. Okay. The difference between you and me, Ashley, is that you are in the classroom. You are current, right? So absolutely feel free to use everything that you're doing. However, make sure that you're respecting the privacy of your students, okay? So for example, I left the classroom in 2013, but immediately after that, I ran a nonprofit. And so I continued to do, activities with kids and taking lots of pictures, but I made sure that I had a media release that allowed me to use those pictures in, whatever content I was creating, okay? I'm not sure if the media release that your school has on your student would apply if you wanted to say post their picture on Instagram or something like that. So I would be very careful about using pictures of students. But when it comes to student work, as long as you remove their name from it and it's not identifiable, I think it's absolutely a great idea for you to use that work that you're currently doing as an exemplar, right? And that's going to make you so much more relevant to your audiences, because teachers are not interested in hearing from someone who doesn't know the struggle, right? If you have someone who's just kind of talking very theoretically and can't show any real life examples of what they've done with students, they're not going to be relevant. You're not going to be as successful. So the answer is yes. I'll give you an example of something that I used to do, and I always give this advice when I do Google training. I used to use my personal Gmail account. What I would do is when I created content for my students, I would create it using my personal Gmail account, and then I would share it with my work Gmail account. The reason why I would do this is so that I personally am the owner. I know that a lot of times we may find ourselves jumping from school to school. And if you store all of your content on the school Google Drive, you can lose access to that work immediately the day that you leave that district. But that will not happen if you create on your own personal Google Drive and then share it with your work account so that you can still use it on the network, still share it in Google Classroom, but at the end of the day, it belongs to you. Okay, so thank you for sharing that question, Ashley. I think I have time to take one more from Stormy. With so many educational, I love this, consultants out there already, what is the best way to differentiate yourself from others? I'm glad you asked me that question, Stormy. So this is something that comes up a lot. This is also, something that we all wonder about, like what's going to make me different? What's going to make me better than the others? I'm going to address this question in more depth later, but here's what I have to say right now. It's you. It's you. It's not about the content. It's not about, having to necessarily find your niche. You are going to be the draw. Okay. And what I mean by that is just think about the fact that a lot of us who go into being educational consultants, we didn't necessarily participate in a lot of training. At least that was my experience. I didn't participate in a whole lot of training. I didn't buy a lot of training. Like if I wanted to learn something about Google, I would just Google it, right? And I'm sure that's true for a lot of us. And so then the question becomes, if you can just Google anything, like if, for example, Formule, this is something that, Desiree, you're going to have someone come on and talk about in August, right? If I want to know about Formule, I can hop off of this session and Google it and learn it today, right? So then the question is, why would I wait until August? The reason is because of that person, that human connection, right? And particularly if that human being is really articulate, that person is really well organized, they're really entertaining, right? That's a thing as well, right? We like to be entertained, we like to be engaged, right? That's what's going to make the difference. So when you stop and think about how many schools we have in this country, how many students, how many teachers, right? We have to let go of this belief that somehow we're just going to have too many educational consultants, too many people to help teachers. I don't think that's a thing, okay? So I want you to focus on building your consultancy. Don't worry about the competition, okay? Because you are going to carve out your own unique niche based on your unique experience, your unique personality, your unique talents, okay? So I hope that I answered that question, but like I said, I will go into a little depth about it later. But again, thank you so much for those of you who posed those questions. Now, let's talk about the side hustle. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to say this to you. If you're still in the classroom and you're trying to do consulting on the side, there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with calling it a side hustle. Don't do that. Okay, so a quote from the book: the words you use to describe your consultancy, they matter, okay? And so I actually have this little quick video I want to share with you. It is from Maya Angelou, and she talks about the impact of words. Now, the reason why I shared this video is because I really want you to think about what you're communicating about your business, because regardless of how you're doing it, your educational consultancy is a business, right? And I want you to think about what you're communicating to your clients, your potential clients, to your colleagues, when you say that this is a side hustle, right? First of all, I don't think that hustle is really a positive word that you would use to describe anything, right? Also, I just want you to consider, as a client, like let's say you're a hairdresser. If you're a hairdresser, you're going and you want to get some new dramatic haircut, and your hairdresser is like, yeah, girl, this is just a side hustle. you gonna feel about that? Right? So I really want you to think deeply about the words that you use to describe this business that you're building. I really love Rachel. It's so funny that you brought up Rachel because she's actually one of the people I interviewed for this book. And I love this quote from her. I'm a full-time teacher and a full-time consultant. Okay. So Rochelle, you can see how prolific she is, right? She is out here writing books. She's consulting, and she's still a full-time teacher, right? So I really want you to consider, if this is something that you want to do on the side, how can you do it in such a way that it's still being presented to your potential clients as something that's very important to you, right? Now, I'm not saying to you that you have to take this approach, because I know for some of us, it's like, oh no, like it's hard enough being a teacher. Like, I don't want to take on being a full-time consultant as well. You don't necessarily have to take that approach, but I do think that these are the 3 things that you need to consider if you are going to be consulting on the side. The first thing is transparency. You need to be transparent with all of your stakeholders about what you're doing. So if you have a full-time job, you need to be transparent with your employer about what you're doing, right? Because you don't want to have a situation where you're kind of trying to fly under the radar, which again, I think that side hustle language kind of implies. You want your employer to know that this is what you're doing. And you also want to know what the limits are, right? Like, you don't want to be seen as double dipping. Oh, I'm taking a day off so I could go train teachers somewhere. Some schools are okay with that. Some schools are not. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you're being, called to the carpet because you weren't honest about how you're managing your business. Same thing is true with your clients, right? You may need to let your clients know, hey, I have a full-time job, so I may not be able to, talk to you during the school day, right? But I'm happy to talk to you after hours. I'm happy for us to meet on the weekends, right? And just making sure that everyone involved knows what to expect. Consistency is important as well. So when I say consistency, what I mean is that basically you need to make sure that the work that you're doing is consistent in nature. So for example, you don't want to say to a client that I have a full-time job and that's why I wasn't able to respond to your email in 2 weeks, right? Even if every day you're going to have to set aside time, like maybe 6 o'clock every evening, that's when I'm going to go in and check my emails, because you're not going to be able to maintain a successful business if you're not consistent in your communication, right? So you just want to make sure that you're setting aside a certain amount of time to keep your business going. And then consistency leads to the next one, collaboration. If you are working a full-time job, you're probably not going to be able to run your business on your own. And I know that's daunting, because a lot of us think, okay, well, the reason why I'm becoming a consultant is so that I can do this on my own. Yeah, but if you have a full-time job, you might need some help, right? You might need to hire a virtual assistant. I talk about that in the book. This is a person who can take calls during the day. This is a person who can schedule things and even, line up travel for you and all of that good stuff. So a lot of times your ability to be consistent is based on your ability to bring in other people to help you run your business. Now, we have to talk about this because I know that this is a big factor as well. So I'm going to go to the chat. I'm going to the chat, and I just want a quick yes or no. Is this a factor for you? Is this something that may be keeping you from starting, right? Because we talked about that in the beginning. You just need to start. So if you haven't started, yes or no, is this a factor? Okay. I see lots of yeses coming in. So I got 3 yeses, 2 nos, yes. No. Okay, so it's a mixture. Okay, I got a couple of no's. I got some yeses. Now, for those of you who are saying no, right? I wonder if some of you are saying no because you have already started. Okay, so no is not keeping you from starting, but is fear a factor? Because for me, I've started, but sometimes I get afraid of growth. I get afraid of putting myself out there too much. So for my no's, if I reframe that question and say, okay, you've already started, is fear happening at all? Is fear preventing you from doing anything with your consulting business? Yes. Well, the reason why I asked that question is because one of the biggest ways that you can tackle fear is talk about it. Talk about it. Okay. So for those of you who are afraid, and I know for a lot of us it is a factor, you need to talk about it. Don't keep it a secret. And when I say talk about it, I do want to qualify that. Be careful about who you talk about it with. Okay. There are lots of people in our lives who we know we cannot have a conversation with about starting a business, right? You have a colleague who's been, teaching for 50 years and has no intention on doing anything else ever. And you say, you know what, I think I'm going to quit my job and start a consulting business. They're probably gonna say, oh no, you can't do that. What about health insurance? What about, and they're gonna give you a laundry list of all the reasons why you should not be doing it. Okay. Family members, and I can see in the chat, Desiree say everyone is not for you. And I agree with that. There are going to be people out there who just, for whatever reason, they may be jealous. They may not be able to understand what you're doing. But I want you to consider, what if most people do have your best interests at heart? They love you. I'm thinking about like family members. You have family members who love you and care about you. And when you tell them that you want to take a risk, they're going to tell you not to do it, right? They're going to tell you not to do it, but not because, they want to see you fail. It's actually quite the opposite. They don't want to see you fail, right? And so it's going to be really important, especially in the beginning when you're trying to figure out how you feel about this and what direction you're going to go in, that you make very careful choices about who you share this with, okay? I think that someone who's already doing the work, right? Someone who is already an educational consultant, that would be a great person to talk to. Somebody who is a really trusted friend who you can trust with your, fears and trepidations, and they're not gonna put you down or be afraid. That would be a good person. A mental health professional, if you have a therapist, that would be a great person to talk to, right? So I just want you to know that you should talk about it, but don't feel like you have to talk to everyone about it, okay? So what are you afraid of? So I already see in the chat, I see someone saying, I have a colleague who wants to ride on my coattails, so I can't tell them anything anymore. That's not true, Ashley. Don't feel like you can't talk to that person. I see Memory says, me too, girl. Yes. And let's be honest. If you are thinking about becoming an educational consultant, it is probably because you're really good at what you do and people look up to you. People want your answers to their questions, right? So being an educational consultant kind of means that like everybody's going to be riding your coattails. Do you agree with that, Desiree? Everybody's going to be riding your coattails. That's like, you're an expert, right? You are presenting yourself as a public expert on education. And so for that reason, there will be people who are going to say, oh, I need to, whatever she's doing, I want to be associated with that. Take that for the compliment that it is. Remember, there's nothing that they can take away from you. They can't take away your talent. They can't take away any opportunities that are for you. Okay. So I just really want you to consider that. All right. So I know we are starting. Are we wrapping up should I be wrapping up at 12:50, Desiree, or do I have until 1? You just tell me.
Until 1.
Okay, I have 10 minutes left. Okay, good. So I have time to talk about this thing. Is this a factor for anyone? Desiree put this in the chat already, but I wonder, is there anyone else who suffers from this? Imposter syndrome. What if they find out that I'm not really an expert? I'm not as smart as this other person who's doing this work, right? What about this big person? We're always comparing ourselves to others. We're always thinking that they're going to find out that I'm not really all that smart. I just Googled all this stuff, right? So here's another quote from the book. The belief that you do not know what you're doing or that you will be exposed as a charlatan is simply an illusion fueled by self-doubt. Okay, I'm going to read that again. The belief that you do not know what you're doing or that you will be exposed as a charlatan is simply an illusion fueled by self-doubt. Okay, so Maurice, I'm going to push back on what you just said. I was told that we are supposed to have imposter syndrome. It pushes us. Here's what I believe, Maurice. We have a choice about what we choose to think. what we think, the thoughts that we entertain are a choice, right? So if I know that I can choose the thought that I'm going to entertain, then guess what? I'm going to entertain a positive one because that's to my benefit. So when there's that little voice inside that says, ooh, you don't know what you're talking about. Ooh, they're going to find out, right? I'm going to tell that voice to go sit down, and I'm going to say to myself, I know what I'm doing. I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. I belong here, right? So what I want you to recognize is that if you have a choice as to the thoughts that you're going to entertain, then choose a better one, right? You don't have to lean into all those negative feelings, okay? And so I just really want you to think about that, okay? So the last thing I want to say about fear is that I want you to block fear by being intentional. So we've already talked a little bit about some of the fears that come up. And for me, one of my biggest fears, especially running a nonprofit, was making sure that the money was right. Because, you know, when you're running a nonprofit, all the money you get is public funds. And so if you mismanage a penny of that money, you can land in jail, right? So rather than letting that fear prevent me from starting my nonprofit, I knew from the very beginning that I needed to put systems in place so that I could account for the money that's coming in. And so something that you can do is write a business plan. Write a business plan. Sit down and write that business plan, and everything that you're afraid of, address it in that business plan. If you're wondering about money, then figure out when you write your business plan, what are you going to do? What are your contingencies? If you don't make a certain amount of money, then, you know, what does that mean for your business? What is your threshold that you want to make? So having a business plan is a really important part of being intentional and recognizing that some of your fears can be addressed if you just plan for them. Okay. And so the last thing I want to say about fear is this quote from Elizabeth Gilbert: putting fear in the back seat. So I don't know how many of you have seen this. I have one more video I want to share with you. And it's this great story, this great, I'm not even going to say anything else. Let me just show the video. So I actually, in that, I did actually quote that whole speech that she gives to fear in the book, because I thought it just did such a great job at reminding us that it is true. Going back to you, Memories, it is true that fear is going to be there, right? So the goal is not to eliminate fear. It's to recognize that fear is there, but it shouldn't be, you know, in charge. It shouldn't be controlling your decision-making process. So I want to say to you that if you have any fears that are keeping you from starting, let them go, right? Don't let them be a part of your process as to how you're going to get started. And if you're already doing the work, don't let fear put any limitations on you. So what are some next steps, right, as we wrap up? Well, the first thing, of course, I'm going to recommend that you buy the book, right? I hope everything that I've talked about here today is a part of Chapter 3, launching your educational consulting business. But there are so many other things for you to learn. And I really do try my best to give you a step-by-step guide. And so today was very, you know, talking on a high level, but lots of very practical advice: where you need to go to register your business with your state, how you need to set up your finances, everything. Okay. And so once you've bought the book, I see someone already bought the book, cha-ching, right? Once you've bought the book, another option would be to subscribe. So if you go to my website, you can subscribe to updates about the book. And there are two main reasons why I want you to do that. With the updates, like anything that you need to know, like, for example, when books start shipping, because, you know, right now we're pre-ordering, I'll give you updates on that. Any information that I can share with you, any resources, I want you to be tuned into those updates. But another thing, that video that I shared with you earlier from John Sowash, he is just one of, again, over 40 people I interviewed for this book, and I recorded all of those interviews. So I'm still I put all those videos up on my personal social media like months ago when I did those interviews, but now I have all these videos and I'm like, I got to use them. So I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to do yet. I'm thinking maybe I'll create a YouTube channel, or, you know, maybe create an Instagram or a Facebook associated with the book. But I also want you to stay tuned, because I think you're going to be interested in seeing all of those great interviews. And then lastly, tell a friend. We all know somebody who is in the classroom thinking about what's next for them, thinking about other options. So if you know someone who could benefit from the information that's in this book, then I am asking you to let them know. Okay. Now, for those of you who have ordered the book, I also want to give you this offer. So this is an email address. I don't know, Des, I'm going to actually try to drop it into the chat right now. Now, this email address, this is exclusive for you being here today. So you will not find this on the web anywhere. So you want to make sure you get this written down. This email address, which I just put in the chat as well. If you have already pre-ordered the book, what I'm asking you to do is to send me evidence of that at that email address. Send me a screenshot of your receipt from Amazon or whatever you've done. And when you email that address, I'm going to send you chapter 2 from the book, which is about writing a business plan. Okay. And so what's cool about that chapter, and I can go ahead and pull it up. What's really cool about this chapter is, of course, you get all of that content, but there's also at the end of the chapter, there is a link where you can actually build your business plan right there. Okay. And so I have a lot of things like this in the book, again, because I'm techie. And so I wanted to make sure you had some of those tech tips in here. So again, if you have pre-ordered the book, please go ahead and send me an email at this address so that I can get you that business plan chapter. So again, thank you so much, Desiree, for having me. Thank you to all of you who took the time to attend here today. I hope that you got some information that you'll be able to use. So again, thank you.
Tinashe, what if they are watching the video? Does this expire at any time?
No, you can leave it on the video.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so very much for coming here and just giving real transparent, real talk about not only how to start your business, but it was really inspirational to get started with your business. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.